Oh, I'm on. Hey, what's up? This is Jared Hoffman with the HBC. Jesus Christ, no. This is the Better Than Less Than podcast. I'm late. I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. I needed a nap in the worst way, and I overslept. That's why I'm late. I was supposed to be on at 2:30. I was originally supposed to be on at 2. I looked at that clock and said, "I'm not gonna make it to 2. I'm too tired. Let me make it 2:30." I set my alarm for 2:30. I wake up at 2:40. Man, I'm all over the place. But here to bring y'all the latest edition of the Better Than Less Than podcast. If you can, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to become a level 1, 2, or 3 member. And you can always follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on Twitter, we on Instagram, we on Facebook, Blue Sky, all of the social media platforms. Search HBCU Sports. We gonna be there. And then you can always go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news and sports. Everybody that's new to this page that may not know about the Better Than Understand podcast, it is all about the Division II and NAIA HBCUs. So you'll see all the news about the CIAA, SIAC, the HBCUAC, and our independent HBCUs like Lincoln, Missouri, like Zula, like, well, not Houston Tillotson anymore. They're in the HBCUAC now. But when they were independent, we would have talked about the Texas College, who's in the conference. That's who we're talking about. So Division II and the NAIA HBCUs. That's this show for all the news in the MEAC. You could watch the MEAC and more with Chris Stevens. Usually on Wednesdays. Wasn't on this Wednesday because we had SWAC Media Day and the CIAA Media Day. But usually we have the MEAC and more with Chris Stevens on Wednesdays, and we have the SWAC Page podcast with Kendrick Marshall and Ken Rashad. So all of our SWAC fans, the majority of our page is SWAC fans. So if you looking for some SWAC content, you can go to the SWAC Page podcast for that, and that usually airs on Fridays. So, hey, I'm doing this live. Hey, I ain't even about to fake it for y'all. I thought it was something on my face for a second. I'm all over the place, man. Let's get into it. It's well, now we got to calm ourselves down because we have an unfortunate story to start off with, and that is, wait, hold on. Let me see if I can get it up. Hold on a second. We doing this live. We're doing this. We're doing this all live right now. All right, let's wait for it. And this is what happens when you don't have a producer. Boom. All right. Unfortunate news that Winston-Salem State running back Trevon Hester, it has been announced that he will miss the 2025 HBCU football season after a cancer diagnosis. Now, this was reported by Winston-Salem State head coach Robert Massey during CIAA Media Day. He made it known that Trevon Hester will miss the 2025 season due to cancer, made it very clear that he will be okay. So send your prayers to Trevon Hester for a speedy recovery. He is expected to be okay. We pray that continues to be the case. So, yeah, there's not much more that needs to be said other than that thank God that it is expected that he will be okay after this diagnosis. It's very unexpected news to hear. You know, I think WSSU Ram Nation said that there was reports that he was going to miss the season, and we had no idea what it was, what that reason was then. You know, but now we know that it was because of cancer diagnosis. There's no specifics about the diagnosis, about when he received this diagnosis or what specifically it is, but honestly, I don't think that really matters. The only thing that we need to know is that he is dealing with this diagnosis and he is expected to be okay. So sending prayers to Trevon Hester, his family, and to the team as they try to move on after such a shocking development. So that's the development that was the biggest development out of CIAA Media Day. Robert And also Robert Massey made it abundantly clear, getting back to the football element, that he has brought in guys that he expects to fill in that role that Trevon Hester filled last season. He was a all CIAA second team selection last season. He not led because that was Jada Byers, but he was second in the CIAA in rushing last season, averaged over 80 yards per game, and was, I believe, fourth to fifth in the conference in all-purpose yards per game. So a big loss for the Winston-Salem State offense. But as Robert Massey said, he believes his team will be okay. As he put it, one of the best 8 quarterbacks in HBCU football, in Dalen Lee, who was named to the All CIAA preseason first team. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, just prayers to Trevon Hester, and hope everything it smoothed out and that he is able to live a full life. Forget about whether he's able to return to football. That should be the least of anybody's worries. We just want him to be able to live a full, healthy life. A young man like him shouldn't have to deal with anything like this. We see people younger than him deal with things like this, and it is just tragic to see. But thankfully, he's expected to be all right. We pray that stays the same, and yeah, we'll just leave it there. Now, be on to lighter news. We have a shocking development out of the SIAC. You know, we got hit by tons of bricks with that news from Winston-Salem State, and then Edward Waters hits us with a shocking. Well, not Edward Waters, but technically Edward Waters, but their coach hit them with some shocking news that Toriano Morgan, he is resigning due to, as Football Scoop reports, he is resigning for personal reasons. After 4 seasons with Edward Waters, Toriano Morgan is not being relieved of his duties. What's the word I'm looking for? He resigned from Edward Waters after 4 seasons. No clear reason was given publicly. It is only being stated that it resigned for personal reasons and is expected to return to coaching at a later date. Toriano Morgan was hired by Edward Waters ahead of their first season in the SIAC in 2021. He posted a 18-24 overall record in his time at Edward Waters. Put his name on the map in 2023 when he led Edward Waters to a 6-4 overall record, which was their best season in nearly 20 years, led by Jerron Russell at quarterback. And I believe Nate Rembert was on that team in 2023 when they had that breakout season in what was their 3rd season in the SIAC. After the departure of Jerron Russell and Nate Rembert entered the transfer portal, they had a significant setback the following season in 2024. They finished 3-7, and yeah, it was going to be a tall task for Edward Waters to be competitive this upcoming season, but now they're completely shifting focus a month out from the season. We're a month away from the season, and now you're shifting to with a new top guy, a top coach. Now, you were thinking it was going to be Coach Morgan, who had been having a promising tenure with Edward Waters, even despite the setback of the 3-win drop from last season. But yeah, but the good thing is that they have a veteran coach filling in as interim coach who was a part of the coaching, who has been a part of the coaching staff. Brian Jenkins Sr., that name would sound familiar because he was previously the head coach at Alabama State, and most notably at Bethune-Cookman. He will now step in as and also his son, Brian Jenkins Jr., was a wide receiver at Prairie View A&M. So Brian Jenkins Sr. will step in as the interim head coach, and he will try to get Edward Waters into SIAC championship contention. That's going to be a tall task. There's a lot of competitive teams at the top of the SIAC. You know, we'll get to the how the SIAC predicted that the SIAC was going to play out. But I believe Edward Waters was toward the bottom of the conference, which is rightfully so, because the top of the conference is yeah, absolutely. Morgan was at Media Day. He absolutely was at Media Day. I wasn't there, but I can't confirm that he was there. he was there, which is interesting. And it makes me think what this possibly could be. It had to be something serious that made him resign at the last minute. You know, because there's no way that you appear at Media Day not knowing, without knowing that you were going to do this. You know, that I refuse to believe that he knew he was going to do this and still went to Media Day. Like, if you're going to resign, you got to let the school know well ahead of time that you're intending to do that. You know, so I refuse to believe that this is just like a circumstance of he had been thinking about doing this for a long time. No, I feel like this was a spur of the moment thing based on circumstance. Whether he comes out publicly and states the reason for why, hopefully it's not because of anything involving his family. Hope his family is well, and that it has nothing to do with that. You know, prayers up to him if that is the reason, but we're not going to speculate. But yeah, I refuse to believe that this was just a spur of the moment thing, and not that this was planned. I refuse to believe this was planned. This had to be something that was spur of the moment, and he had no choice but to do this. But hopefully, you know, he returns to coaching, and he and his family are okay. We're after the Winston-Salem State news, we don't want any kind of inclination of someone in his family or himself having bad health. You know, we're praying for good health for everybody across the HBCU atmosphere. You know, so yeah, but that was the big news out of the SIAC, that Toriano Morgan, after 4 seasons, was stepping down from his post at Edward Waters, and Brian Jenkins Sr. will be taking over as interim head coach. And we'll see in the future whether or not Brian Jenkins Sr. is named the full-time head coach. He's upgraded to full-time head coach of Edward Waters, or if Edward Waters decides to look elsewhere for their next head coach. And we'll see in the future where Toriano Morgan will eventually end up. But moving on, we have CIAA Media Day was yesterday, and we had SIAC Media Day 2 days prior. But we talked about CIAA storylines last week, so we're going to quickly go through the CIAA predicted order of finish, and then we'll get to what was supposed to be the topic of this video, which is the top storylines in the SIAC. We already had the biggest storyline out of Edward Waters. You know, what the impact of Toriano Morgan, you know, resigning, and Brian Jenkins Sr. and being shuffled, and will that help or hurt Edward Waters? So basically just gave you Edward Waters' biggest storyline. So what are my thoughts on Morehouse? We'll get to that in a second. But first, we got to quickly talk about the CIAA predicted order of finish. Let's get that up on the screen here. All right, so at the top, I'm pretty sure you can't see that, but I'm pretty sure you guys know already. The CIAA is predicting Virginia Union for the third straight season to finish atop the CIAA. They have Johnson C. Smith at number 2 and Virginia Union at number 3. That's the big three that everyone is expecting, and that's not surprising. I'm a little bit surprised that Virginia Union was picked to finish number 1 after Jada Byers is not there anymore. So I thought that maybe some points would be taken off for that. But the SIDs, was it the SIDs that voted on this? Yes, SIDs are still expecting Virginia Union to be atop the conference, which is not far-fetched. Curtis Allen is still there, and he's very talented, and he could absolutely keep Virginia Union atop the conference. But the heavy talented Johnson C. Smith team, they're expected to finish second. And Virginia State, who was the runner-up last year, apparently the SIDs have more faith in Johnson C. Smith than they do Virginia State. Then filling out the rest of the predicted order finish, Fayetteville State was number 4. That's a little bit shocking to me. They had a down year last year, a rare down year last year, and was toward the middle of the pack, somewhere they're not used to being. The Winston-Salem State is picked to finish 5th. Not sure WSU Ram Nation believes in that. My alma mater, Bowie State, was picked to finish 6th. Livingstone was picked to finish 7th. Them being that low was surprising to me. They had a turnaround year last year. Maybe it's because they don't have a lot of their guys returning. Looking at the preseason all conference team, I notably don't see any of their defensive backs that were there last year. Only one of their defenders from last year, which is Davion Watkins, is on the preseason all conference team. So maybe it's because of the losses on the defensive end that docked Livingstone. So that defense that we saw last season may not be as good as it was last year. Maybe the names that are there now will put themselves on the map this upcoming season. So we'll just have to wait and see. Shaw, in its first season under Lamar Manigault, they are predicted to finish 8th. Elizabeth City State picked to finish 9th. Lincoln 10th, and Bluefield State bringing up the rear and 11th. So moving on to the preseason all-conference team, Dalen Lee. He is the quarterback selection, and the running back selections are Trayvon Tinsley and Michael Robinson. Interesting that Curtis Allen isn't there. I need to catch up. I didn't get to watch the full CIAA Media Day. I don't know if there was any. No, there was no preseason player of the year, and that was also very interesting to me. I thought that would have went to either Curtis Allen or Dalen Lee anyway, or I thought I had no leads on who was going to be preseason defensive player of the year, but probably was going to be KJ McNeil if anybody. But no, there was no preseason player of the year. But anyway, Michael Robinson, who was on the all CIAA all rookie team, he was the second running back selection for the preseason all conference team. Brevin Caldwell and Zaire Tart, were the running back selections. Devin Cunningham of Winston-Salem State is the tight end selection. We have 2 Virginia State offensive linemen, Bruno Onwuzor. My apologies for butchering your name, but Bruno Onwuzor, man, I butchered your name, and Talik McCoy were the offensive lineman selections. Benjamin Hicks of Fayetteville State, Adrian Crespin, and of Virginia Union, and Elijah Gordon of Winston-Salem State round out the offensive line selections. Lamont Hill Jr. for Johnson C. Smith starts off the defensive line selections, as I mentioned, Davion Watkins, Jay Sean Austin, and Cameron Davis of Virginia State are your defensive linemen. KJ McNeil, a linebacker for Virginia State, Quaywan Hillard of Shaw, and Jamari Slade of Fayetteville State are your linebacker selections. For defensive backs, you have two again for Virginia State, Donovan Howard and Marquise Edmond, Jordan Williams of Bowie State, and Keyshawn Monk from Fayetteville State. That rounds out the defensive selections. And then for special teams, we have Zaire Tart of Virginia Union as a kick return. You have Brady Myers of Virginia Union as a place kicker. You have Terrence Holland as a punt returner for Elizabeth City State, and Darius Satterfield as a punter for Elizabeth City State. So that's your all CIAA preseason team. Yes, no preseason player of the year. Maybe they just didn't know who to pick. I don't know why you wouldn't know who to pick. Just pick somebody. I don't understand why you couldn't give somebody that recognition. But look, that I don't know if they have done that in previous years. I could go back to the archives, but we ain't got enough time to do all that. But so that's your predicted order of finish and your all preseason team out of the CIAA. Now let's get to the topic of this video, which is the SIAC. Last week we did the top storylines in the CIAA. Now this week we will do that for the SIAC. But first, we're gonna get to the all preseason team and the predicted order of finish that was handed out by the conference. They actually did name a preseason players of the year. It was Isaiah Knowles of Albany State, quarterback of Albany State. He was picked to win the preseason offensive player of the year. And Demetrius Patterson of Benedict, he was named to the preseason defensive player of the year. A couple of interesting things I see on the SIAC preseason team is pretty much almost all of the skill positions are swept by Albany State. Isaiah Knowles, not shocking, is as the first team quarterback. Tyant Weiss, again, not surprising. He is the selection for the one of two selections for the running back, along with Javante Leatherwood. The thing that's shocking to me is that they have both wide receivers represented. Jamil Williams and Javion Jackson are both represented, which is interesting that Jamal Jones isn't there, because I thought he was still there. So apparently he will not be there, because the second team has Nanders Lawrence and Makai Lovett of Allen and Edward Waters, respectively. So the fact that there's no Jamal Jones for Clark Atlanta, that's what I was banking on. No Virgil Young. We already knew there wasn't any Jesus, I'm getting old. I'll be forgetting names out the yin yang. The guy that transferred to Johnson C. Smith from Clark Atlanta. No, don't do this. Don't do this on the internet. Don't do this on national internet. What is this? Oh man, I'm blanking on his name, but yeah. So none of the top receivers from last season for Clark Atlanta will be returning this season. Hold on, I'm looking it up. Armand Harris, that's his name. Jesus, Armand Harris. He is no longer there. Virgil Young apparently no longer there, because if he is there, he should absolutely be on this SIAC preseason team. And Jamal Jones apparently not there, because he absolutely should be on this preseason team as well. So Albany State had, with all this talent on there, you had to believe that they have the confidence that they will be the top team in the SIAC, and they absolutely do have the confidence in them, because they have been picked to finish number 1 in the SIAC's predicted order of finish. Clark Atlanta, who I just mentioned lost all that talent, apparently they're number 2, and Tuskegee's number 3, and they are ahead of the reigning conference champion Miles Golden Bears. So Miles, after losing their coach to Alabama A&M, they are being picked to finish 4th in the conference. So they don't get the grace of being the defending champions and saying that you gotta beat the to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Nope. They don't think that they're the man. So no, Harris is not back with Clark. He's with Johnson C. Smith. That's the one person that is confirmed that he's not there. But I didn't see it. I don't think I saw anything about Jamal Jones or Virgil Young entering the transfer portal. The big news coming out of the Clark Atlanta was that David Wright III, who is the 2-time reigning SIAC Player of the Year, that he was denied eligibility for this season. So we saw that. We knew that they weren't going to have David Wright, and we knew that they weren't going to have Armand Harris because he transferred to Johnson C. Smith. But I had no idea that Jamal Jones or Virgil Young, not that neither of them were there anymore. We also reported that Zai McDonald, the former backup quarterback at Jackson State, he transferred to Clark Atlanta this offseason. So, and I thought hasn't announced it yet for Harris. Not sure what you mean hasn't announced it yet, but but Zai McDonald being there, I thought that with him, Jamal Jones, and Virgil Young, that they could potentially still have a level of success. Maybe not the exact same level of success, but something close. But now that I see that Jamal Jones and Virgil Young are apparently not there anymore, my outlook on Clark Atlanta is much different. And them being number 2 would be very generous, but continuing with the predicted order of finish, Fort Valley State has been picked to finish 5th. Savannah State picked to finish 6th. Benedict 7th. Edward Waters 8th, who we just talked about. Jamal Jones was a senior. I thought it said he was a junior. Maybe I misread it. That he was actually a senior instead of a junior. But maybe they misclassified him. I don't know. Because when I look through the off season, I always check the social media pages. I try to find the social media pages. Their social media pages are hard to find, so I look up their names. I look up their social media pages. I look on all my D2 football sources. Shout out to d2football.com. That's one of my main sources that I go to for all the transfer portal news. And I didn't see anything about Jamal Jones or Virgil Young entering the transfer portal. But anyway, back to the predicted order of finish. Allen was picked to finish 9th. Kentucky State 10th. Morehouse 11th. Lane 12th. And rounding out the field is Central State. So let's get into these storylines. And we are going to start let's just go according to the predicted order of finish and start with, wait a second. we are going to start with Albany State. So now that we know that Jamal Jones and Virgil Young are apparently not going to be there anymore, we already knew about the loss of David Wright and and Armon Harris for Clark Atlanta. So Albany State was already going to be the favorite with all of those, those losses for with the losses of David Wright and Armon Harris for Clark Atlanta. But now that we know that Jamal Jones and Virgil Young are on that list, Albany State is even more the favorite now. So my question for Albany State is, are they ready to deal with that kind of pressure? Tyant Weiss is coming off an impressive freshman season for Albany State, had over 1,000 yards, all-purpose yards last year. He's one of the guys that I'm expecting to be a top candidate for the Deacon Jones Trophy, aka the Black College Football Player of the Year award. Also, Isaiah Knowles is going to be one of those top candidates for the SIAC, not SIAC player. Well, yes, the SIAC Player of the Year, but the Deacon Jones Trophy as well. So that talent, the talent gap between them and the rest of the SIAC looks to be significant on paper. They have the majority of the skill position guys, all but one, which is the other running back spot. They have all the skill position guys on the SIAC preseason first team. So on paper, they have significantly more offensive talent than any other team. And defense is usually the backbone of their team. So if they can produce on defense like that we have seen them do in years past, and they have all this offensive talent, the gap between them and the rest of the conference looks pretty significant. So my question is, can they deal with these expectations? I said the same thing about Johnson C. Smith. They like Johnson C. Smith, were expected to be a contender for a conference championship spot. Now the circumstances were much different as to how Albany State missed the championship game and how Johnson C. Smith finished finished short of the championship game. But there is still that expectation for both teams to catapult ahead of the teams that were there last year, because there's a significant offensive talent gap between them and their conference competitors. So that's my question for Johnson C. Smith. They have they're in the third season under their head coach, and he's gotten off to a fast start with this team. They have. It's almost like they haven't been in a rebuild. Like it's the quickest Quinn Gray has them on the quickest rebuild that we've ever seen. Like and it wasn't really even like they fell off at all. Like they just went from the top of the CIAA to the middle of the CIAA. So I mean SIAC. I said CIAA. They went from the top of the SIAC to the middle of the SIAC. And then with Quinn Gray, they went from the middle of the SIAC back towards the top of the SIAC. Made it to the SIAC championship game in his first season. So they will be the significant favorite going into the 2025 season, and we'll have to see if they're able to deal with the pressure that comes with that. Next up, we have the number 2 team on the predicted order of finish, Clark Atlanta. And we have a Jackson State fan who says that he is rolling with Clark Atlanta. But Zy McDonald, the question for him is, can he handle the pressure of being the full-time starting quarterback? When he was at Jackson State, he had Toriano Morgan, who occupied that spot. He had a multitude, a revolving door of quarterbacks who were coming in and taking over as starter, and then they would shift. It's him now. He has the keys to the kingdom, and he has the potential to be able to have a dominant season and keep Clark Atlanta at the top of the standings in the SIAC. He was an instrumental in Jackson State winning the SWAC last season when Jacoby and Morgan went down in the SWAC championship game, and he took over and he helped, guide them to victory. Scored two big touchdowns down the stretch to put them over Southern in that game, and they eventually won the Celebration Bowl. But now you're being tasked with doing that over a 11 game season, potentially 12 games if you make it to the SIAC championship game. So he could be a key in Clark Atlanta's success. He could be. But the question is, with all the talent that has gone out, with Armand Harris being gone, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. Jamal Jones was a 1,000-yard receiver. Virgil Young was a big-time playmaker for them last season. With all those wide receiver weapons gone, who is going to fill in that role? That's going to be the question. Can he deal with the revolving door of talent that went out? So it probably helps that he wasn't there last year. So he was going to have to deal with an array with a different. He was going to have to deal with playing with a different offense in a different offensive system than he had last year with Jackson State. He played on a run-heavy offense last year with Jackson State, captained by Irv Mulligan, the SWAC Offensive Player of the Year last season. So it was already going to be new circumstances for him anyway. So I think that would help him. But the question is, can he one, deal with the pressure of being the full-time starter, and two, can the weapons around him help keep Clark Atlanta in contention for the SIAC? That remains to be seen. One thing I know for sure is that Teddy Keaton is an excellent coach. And one thing I will never question is his coaching acumen or his ability to coach teams that were not expected to be great and making them great. So I fully expect him to do that same thing. I fully expect Clark Atlanta to overachieve. The question is, will that overachievement be an SIAC championship berth or even an SIAC championship win? Because it's not clear that it will be Albany State holding up the trophy at the end of the season. That's not a guarantee. I have them as my favorite to win the SIAC this year, but it's not guaranteed that it will be Albany State. And it's not clear that it's going to be Clark Atlanta. It could be this next team that I'm about to talk about, Tuskegee. Now, Tuskegee has had a revolving door of talent go in and out. Their big-time receiver, Antonio Meeks, is now at Louisville. One of their top defensive backs from last season, Malik Moore, he's now, I believe, at Stephen F. Austin. So they've had a lot of talent go in and out. My question is, who is going to be that next top star for Tuskegee to step up? One thing that Tuskegee has always had in droves is wide receiver talent. Before it was Peyton Ramsey, then it was Antonio Meeks. So where will that next top offensive talent come from? Or where will that next talent in general? Because they've also had top defensive talent. They had Malik Moore, who I just mentioned. They had at one point they had 2 or 3 guys who were on the all SIAC team, on the defensive side of the ball. I see a couple of guys who are named to the SIAC. Mikhail King is still there, who was he was a big part of their season last year. So who is going to step up in the absence of the stars who have gone in and out of the out of the roster in the past couple of seasons? Aaron James, I believe, is entering his third season as head coach of Tuskegee, and he has a good chance of getting them back to the SIAC championship game. Like Winston-Salem State, it's not usual that we see Tuskegee outside of the SIAC championship game. In the 2000s, they lived in the SIAC championship game. It's been years since we've seen them win it. You know, we saw them in the game in 2023, but it's been 2023. But it's been a while since we've seen them hold up that trophy. I believe it was the last time was in 2017 that they won the SIAC. So, you know, Aaron James has done a very good job in his first couple of years as head coach at Tuskegee, but the expectation is championships for Tuskegee, and they're starting to get close. And with the SIAC being as unpredictable as it is, they could creep their way into it and possibly win it. So that's the question for Tuskegee: is where will who is that next top star, and are they going to be good enough to get Tuskegee back to the top of the SIAC? Next up, we have the defending champion, Miles College. Now, they went through a complete overhaul, you know, following the departure of Sam Shade to Alabama A&M. You know, many of their top guys from last season, but in particular on the defensive end, are now gone. Rock Dowdle is now gone. Javante Abner, their top tight end, he's now gone. He followed Sam Shade to Alabama A&M. So my question for them is, are they still championship caliber, or are they in the vein of those teams that have fallen off after losing their head coach? We've seen in the past couple of seasons those reigning champions at the Division II level that fell off after losing, or even the teams that had great seasons that fell off after losing their head coach. We saw it happen with Bowie when Damon Wilson left. We saw it happen with Allen when Teddy Keaton left. We saw it happen with Benedict when Chennis Berry left. You know, so is Miles in that class of teams that fell off after losing their head coach, or do they still have the talent necessary to keep them atop the SIAC? We're gonna keep saying it. The SIAC is wide open. The SIAC is wide open. The fact that they still have Javante Leatherwood, who is a very talented running back, he will have sole reins of the starting position now that I believe that the other running back, I forget his name, but I believe he followed Sam Shade to Alabama A&M. Don't quote me on that. I don't know that. I don't know that for sure. But yeah, it's just curious where the rest of the talent is going to come from Miles, because they don't have many guys on the preseason all-conference team, and that's to be expected. Many of their top guys from last season are now gone. So the question is, will they fall into that trend of teams that fell off after losing their head coach? Or are they still willing, or are they still able to maintain their status as championship contenders? We'll have to see going forward. Next up, we have another team that went through a coaching change this offseason, Fort Valley State. Fort Valley State, they moved on. I mean, not moved on, but Sean Gibbs departed for a position as head coach at one of his former stops in North Carolina A&T. He is now head coach there. He was previously the running backs coach there before he moved on to take the head coaching job at Fort Valley State. But now he's heading back to North Carolina A&T, and this time as the head coach. So my question for Fort Valley State is, are we underrating them? Are we underrating them? Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that they were picked to finish behind Miles, with all the changes that Miles went through. But to be fair, Fort Valley State went through their fair share of changes. One of their top defenders from last season, he transferred to Florida A&M, and some of the talent at Fort Valley State moved on to North Carolina A&T with Coach Gibbs. Their quarterback, most notably, didn't go to North Carolina A&T, but he went to Johnson C. Smith. He's now at Johnson C. Smith. So a lot of the talent that was there for Fort Valley State, that's the main trend in the SIAC. A lot of the talent that we saw in the conference last year is now elsewhere. They're scattered all over the place. HBCU and non-HBCU. A lot of the talent in the SIAC that we're going to see a lot of new blood in the SIAC this year. So the question for Fort Valley State is, are we underrating them? No, they had a chance to be in the SIAC championship game last year. All they had to do was beat Albany State, and they couldn't do it. And that helped Clark Atlanta catapult them. Excuse me. My bad. But Clark Atlanta, goodness gracious, I'm all over the place. Fort Valley State, all they had to do was beat Albany State at the last week of the season to get into the SIAC championship game, and they fell short. And that's actually an even bigger question. Did they miss their window? Was that their window to get into the SIAC championship game and potentially win it? Like, it was going to be a tall task for anybody to beat Miles last year. Clark Atlanta had one of the most dominant offenses we've seen in a while, and they got dismantled by that Miles defense. So it was going to be a tall task for Fort Valley State to get a win in that game anyway. But yeah, there's a much different cast of characters in there for Fort Valley State. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not they are able to perform better than their predicted outcome. Now, I was going to do the field here, but someone in the comments asked me for my thoughts on Morehouse. So I'll give you my thoughts. Morehouse has not been relevant in football in a long time. Yeah, let's just say it. We're just going to come out and say it. Morehouse has not been relevant in football for a long time. They are primarily a basketball school. And I don't see them being relevant in football anytime soon, just because I haven't seen the investment in the football program. They've had some good coaches go in and out in the past couple of seasons after they moved on from their longtime coach. But those are my thoughts, that they have not been relevant in football in a long time, and I don't expect them to be relevant anytime soon. The question for Morehouse this season is, where will the improvement come from? Where will we see an improvement? One thing I will say about Morehouse is that they have always, despite the fact that most nights they will have lesser talent than their opponents, they always come out and compete. That's one thing you could say about the majority of HBCU football teams, is that whether you think they're good or not, or whether they're better than the team they're playing against or not, one thing we will always see from an HBCU football team is effort. You will never be skimped out of effort from an HBCU football team. That's one thing I love about watching HBCU football, is that you will see max effort every single time. So that's basically my thoughts on Morehouse. There's not much to say. when it comes to them, they have not been much of a factor at all in a long time. My bad. And I don't expect them to be a factor anytime soon. So we just have to, worry about, where that improvement is going to come from, and if they will take some kind of significant step toward proving that they are ready to be a championship team. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but hopefully they can prove me wrong and we can see some kind of jump into maybe the middle of the pack, as opposed to being at the bottom of the standings. But last storyline we want to get into is who is the best of the field. So rounding out the SIAC's predicted order of finish, you have Savannah State at 6, Benedict at 7, Edward Waters at 8, Allen at 9, Kentucky State at 10. We just talked about Morehouse, Lane at 12, and Central State at 13. Now, one team that I think could potentially catapult themselves into the top of the standings that is predicted to finish outside the top 5 is possibly Benedict. From a talent standpoint, I think they have the most out of the teams at the bottom of the standings with them. You look at the preseason team; they have 4 key defensive players, including Israel Nwokosha, who I thought was going to be the preseason defensive player of the year. I thought it was going to be Israel that was the preseason player of the year, but they gave it to Demetrius Patterson. Not a bad choice at all, but Israel Nwokosha was their top star on the defensive end last season, and I thought it was going to be him that was the preseason defensive player of the year. But they gave it to Demetrius Patterson. Not a bad choice at all. But then you also have Isaiah Stevens and Cam Williams. Cam Williams? That ain't the same Cam Williams that would just announced he transferred to Johnson C. Smith, is it? Hold on a second. I got to do some investigating now because I didn't even notice that. We're doing this live on camera. But I'll do that. I'll do that later. But a lot of defensive talent there for Benedict on the defensive end, and I think that could be enough for them to shock some teams and potentially put themselves in the SIAC championship race. So, of all the teams in the field that I think could potentially have that I think has the best chance of making a championship run, I think it would be Benedict. Because you look at the rest of the team, Savannah State, they're going to be ushering in a new quarterback. Edward Waters, we just talked about, going through that coaching change. I think that's going to be significant. And even though you could argue that Brian Jenkins Sr. should have been a head coach somewhere. So this is his opportunity to prove that he could be that he needs to be a head coach, that his rightful position. And Edward Waters could potentially be better than what we expect him to be with Brian Jenkins Sr. on those sidelines. But Allen, they're still reeling from moving on from Teddy Keaton and all the stars that went along with him. Kentucky State, they haven't recovered from the limited success that they had after the pandemic. They're still trying to figure it out under Felton Huggins. Lane, they're ushering in a new head coach, and so is Central State. I'm actually kind of surprised that Central State was picked to finish last. I thought that would have been reserved for Morehouse, personally. That's who I thought was going to be last in the predicted order of finish. I thought it was going to be Morehouse. I thought I mean, but Central State they've had a rough go of it past couple of years, so it's not surprising. Honestly, there wouldn't have been a bad choice for who was going to finish last. You know, all of those teams are kind of in the same position where they're jockeying for not finishing last place. So yeah, those are some top storylines in the SIAC this upcoming season. The season starts. We're a month away. Pray for us because this is going to be a hectic time for us. Yeah, looking forward. I'm looking forward to it. Don't get me wrong. Don't let my tone fool you. I'm very excited for the start of the football season, and I just can't wait to see those guys step out on the field, watching some good football go down. The first marquee matchup of the season will be the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic between the reigning conference champions. Miles representing the SIAC and Virginia Union representing the CIAA. And then after that game, you have the Red Tails Classic between two premier Division II HBCU football programs in Tuskegee and Winston-Salem State. Those games will be played on August 31st. The Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic will be on NFL Network, and the Red Tails Classic, I believe, will be on ESPNU. So please tune in to those games. And yeah, just look out for the SIAC football season and the CIAA football season. It's going to be a fun time. So thank you all for watching. I know this was a lot. It was a lot. I appreciate you guys sticking around and interacting in the comment section. Please keep that going. That really helped me keep going through this. Talking by yourself for almost an hour is a lot. So I appreciate your guys' input and helping me along the way. If you can, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to become a level 1, 2, or 3 member. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. So search up HBCU Sports and all of the social media platforms. More than likely, we will be there. And you can go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in HBCU sports. Until next time, see you guys.